You can hear everything in our apartment. The pipes are thin, the walls are thin, even thoughts seem to pass through the plaster. The bathroom is right across from our bedroom, and every night the sound of coughing rolls down the hall from there, like an empty can, rattling, stopping, moving again. Yegor's mother's cough is thick, wet, shy, but stubborn. It gets Yegor out of bed more often than the alarm clock, and on the worst nights he goes into the living room to sleep on the sofa, because there the cough is extinguished by the wall and the rustling of the curtains, and I am left alone in the center of the cold sheet and counting my breaths. 3, 4, 5. Until the calm rarely comes. The three of us have been living here for too long, me, Yegor, and his mother, Lyudmila Petrovna. The apartment is rented in his name, although we all pay together, and to be honest, Yegor and I pay mostly. When we first started dating 8 years ago, I brought her envelopes with money, like a district nurse. This is for debts, this is for medicine, this is to breathe easier. She took it carefully with 2 fingers as if the bills were a disease, and always promised, I'll return it as soon as I get back on my feet. My legs never got back on their feet. They became familiar with the kitchen stool, with the rug by the refrigerator, with the routes to the neighboring bakery, where the bread is handed out warm and the greasy croissant smell of childhood holidays that no one returns to. Lyudmila Petrovna has an explanation for everything. Food is my only pleasure. I don't go to the clinic now. I'm ashamed there because of my things. I don't buy things and they're expensive, and what's the point since I'm at home anyway? Pills? Later, don't bother me. Any later for her is like a swamp, a tempting little carpet of grass in the middle of the forest. Take a step, and you're gone. She loves to laugh, but she doesn't laugh with her eyes. They are always damp, covered with self-pity, like glass in the morning. She has another habit, to cling to Yegor's words. He'll say something, even by accident, even as a joke, and a day later I hear the same thing from her lips, only turned upside down. He promised, he said, and he yelled at me. Although he didn't yell. In the early years, I thought I could fix her. I believed in therapy, in to-do lists and neat charts, weight, steps, pills, savings. I tried to take her to the doctor. She grabbed the doorframe and whispered, "No, my dress is old." I bought her coupons to a salon. She said, "Why, I'm ugly anyway. I'd rather buy some cakes." I convinced myself that it was temporary, that she just needed a start, a kick, a magic pill called support. But over the years, my temporary turned into dust that lies on the kitchen lampshade. It seems weightless, but when you shake it, it flies like a dark cloud and sits back down, thicker. Igor is not a coward. He is kind and tired. He has a look as if he is constantly apologizing for someone's weather. He loves his mother, and this love is like an old blanket with pellets. It warms and irritates at the same time. He will never say no to her straight out. He will explain for a long time, look for a compromise, and while he is looking, she is already building a new bridge over his doubts. Sometimes I see how he listens to her stories, about how I was allegedly rude to her, how I laughed too loudly or closed the closet too abruptly, and how a shadow of a question appears on his face for a second. I hate this shadow, because I know it is not raised by facts, but by intonations. Last Christmas was a milestone for me. We cut tangerines, and the peel lay like stars on a plate. I was reservedly happy about the garland of lights on the windowsill. It was the only new thing in this apartment for the whole year. Lyudmila Petrovna said that evening, "I'll probably move out soon. You young people need privacy. Otherwise, I listen to everything, not on purpose, of course. The walls are thin, hee." She said and looked not at me, but at Yegor, as if he were a judge who had already passed an acquittal. Something inside me cracked with relief. So rare, so dangerous. What if it's true? What if she leaves? I even allowed myself a dream, small and careless, to wake up and hear the silence, to hear my own breathing and not someone else's cough, to walk down the hallway in socks and not bump into a stool on which bags of candy are lying. Then the search for a new apartment for her began. The key condition that she repeated like a mantra: I want the same rent as now. But as now was luck. The area is convenient, the house is old, the owner hasn't raised the price for a long time, not because he's kind, but simply lazy. I showed her options further away and cheaper and suggested, "This is temporary, Lyudmila Petrovna, you wanted to start saving." She winced as if I had suggested that she sleep on a bench. No, it's inconvenient to go there for my buns. Oh, medicine. And every day we had a new request. Is there a washing machine there? And a TV no smaller than yours? And a normal table so that I could, well, you understand. Everything fit into you understand. The refusal to go to the doctor, and the strange pride in poverty, and the eternal it should be. In the end, Yegor and I did what we always did. We closed her not enough with our, okay, let's do it. We made a deposit for her because she almost saved up, but almost, as we know, doesn't count in the bank. We bought her a bed because the springs are uncomfortable. We found a chair because my back hurts. I silently chose a cheaper one. It was new anyway, and that was already a luxury. Yegor went to get a TV. I didn't argue, although I wanted to scream. Our gifts were stacked in a pyramid and still didn't become a home. And at the top of this pyramid, a list of wants suddenly appeared. A more powerful washing machine, a bigger table. But you don't need your sofa anyway, do you? And I'll leave the keys to your apartment. For now, you never know. That evening, I lost my temper. We came back from the store, the snowflakes from my shoes melted in the hallway, and inside I was already boiling. Enough, I said to Yegor. How much longer do you need to tell her no? How many years? He silently put the box with the teapot on the table. I saw his cheekbone twitch, how he swallowed the words. She will leave, he said dully. Don't make it complicated. It's not me who's making it complicated, my voice cracked. It's you who's simplifying it to such an extent that we disappear from our own lives. Lyudmila Petrovna walked in to the smell of loud voices, like a cat to the smell of fish. What are you doing there, children? Is it my fault again? Her eyes were already glassy. I just asked. And I, for the first time in years, looked straight at her, without tricks, without soft words, and I said evenly and in a whisper what I had wanted for a long time. Leave me alone. Just leave me alone. Stop dragging us down. And yes, at the end it came out more rudely, more abruptly than it should have. I burst out with a short, "Get lost." She immediately burst into tears, sank down on a chair like on stage with her palms to her eyes. Yegor looked at me as if I'd hit a child. You went too far, he said. She's leaving, be grateful. I heard strange dogs barking somewhere in the corridor, and the air rushing through the radiators. A cold wave rose up inside me, a mixture of shame and rage. Grateful? I repeated. For what? For the fact that we pay for someone else's adulthood? For the fact that she listens to us through the wall and then pretends that she accidentally hears it? For the fact that every yes of ours makes us smaller? The night passed in silence. There was almost no coughing. She was quietly sobbing in her room, and Yegor went to sleep in the living room. I lay and studied the crack in the ceiling. It looked like a thin compass needle that was spinning, not finding north. I thought that kindness is not when you save anyone who screams, but when you can distinguish I scream because I'm drowning from I scream because this is how I take what's mine. And I didn't know where we were going. To freedom or to another circle. In the morning we were moving her things. The boxes rustled, the tape stretched like a sticky tongue. The snow outside was oversalted. The city had poured it out as a salt slush. She smiled in small portions, as if she was afraid that we would take her smile back. It's so quiet there, she said. You can almost hear the kettle breathing, but you should still leave me the key, just in case. For the first time, you never know. Yegor remained silent. I didn't either. We moved the last box, with blankets and a throw with pellets, and returned to close the door of our apartment and finally exhale. I went into the hallway to get my gloves and, turning around, saw in the mirror, the same old one with scuffs around the edges, how Yegor, looking down, pulled a keychain out of his pocket and put a small shiny key into his mother's palm. Just in case, he said barely audibly. I froze in the doorway, with gloves in my hands, and realized that the calm was being postponed again. The first days after moving were like warm water. I walked into the apartment and didn't bump into anyone's breath, didn't hear a cough, only the rustle of my coat on the hanger and the sleepy whistle of the kettle. The crack in the ceiling suddenly stopped being an arrow of anxiety. It turned into a twig, thin, almost decorative. Yegor walked more quietly, as if he was afraid to spill this new silence. We cooked pasta, which we had never cooked before, watched a movie without pausing for, "Mom, what's wrong with the remote?" Fell asleep in one room, ours, without kicking each other out onto the couch. I almost believed it. We were together again. On the third day, the silence opened the door itself. The keys jingled in the lock, the rubber mat creaked, and she entered, with bags from the bakery with a sugary breath like an oven. "I'm just here for a minute," she smiled, already walking into the kitchen. "I brought you some pies. And anyway, my washing machine is making noise, Yegor. Will you watch? And the TV is also somehow, well, stretched out." A smile stretched thinly, like a film on a glass that they carry and are afraid to spill. Yegor and I exchanged glances. He nodded, habitually, automatically, and went to check the noisy washing machine in her new apartment. Our evening, finally free, shrank to, "Will you have time to come back?" He came back, of course, at 10. When the movie was over, the pasta had cooled and an old feeling settled in my stomach, as if we had been invisibly put on pause. Then the small raids began. She would forget a scarf at our place, come to pick it up, and at the same time wash one mug as a flag of her housekeeping. She would leave a bag of groceries at our place for a minute, because her fridge is full and we have space. She would sit on the edge of the sofa and remember how cozy it is here. I would catch her glance, not at me, but at the walls, as if she was checking if everything was in place. In the evening, Yegor's phone would light up with Mom, more often than messages from the bank. How do I turn off the sound on an ad? Where is the heating button on the kettle? Yegorushka, the faucet in my bathroom seems to be looking at me the wrong way. Once I said, she needs to get the key back. I said it calmly, over tea, without war. Yegor lowered his eyes. Let her be scared for a while. A new place. "We are scared too," I answered. "To live without doors." He fell silent, clutching his mug. I saw how he, almost physically, was again choosing between being a son and being a man who is with me. And again he was postponing the choice. Soon, the first time became a form of time. Stretchy, like chewing gum. I woke up early on Sunday from the click of a lock. She was already standing in our hallway, taking off her boots. I was in a towel, my wet hair was sticking to my neck, the steam from the bathroom was still in the air. "Oh, you're here." She was formally embarrassed, her gaze sliding over the shelf in the bedroom. "I'll just warm up some tea and then I'll leave. My neighbor upstairs is knocking, it's impossible." She turned on our kettle as if it were her own. She stood there, waited for it to boil, and leaving said, "The door, of course, needs to be on a chain, otherwise you never know who might come in." I thought, we're on a chain, not a door. After lunch, she called Yegor and cried, "My daughter from the future," that's what she called me, mockingly, hinting at my plans and lists, "hates me. She's standing in a towel, but she won't close the door. I'm an old man, I feel awkward." I only heard half of his conversation. "Okay, don't cry, I'll come by." And I was left alone again. Anger was sitting somewhere under my ribs, like a frozen bird. It doesn't flap its wings, but it gives off a cold. I started counting not breaths, but symbolicities. In the store, I caught myself taking the quietest sponges for dishes, so that they wouldn't rustle at night. In the kitchen, I rearranged jars of cereals so that someone else's hand wouldn't reach if the door was opened. I hung my plans on the refrigerator, classes, a piggy bank, a summer trip, and caught Yegor's eye. He wanted to believe in them, but he was already apologizing in advance for the fact that something would fall through again, due to circumstances. In the evening, the circumstances came in a leather coat and with a tape measure. Two men in gray jackets walked after her into the living room. "These are the installers," she said cheerfully. "They'll see how to run an outlet under the TV, and also, we'll try on your sofa, maybe it'll suit me, mine is hard." I was so confused by the impudence that I even lost my speech for a second. "No installers without us," she finally said, "and the sofa is ours." Yegor raised his palm. "Mom, we didn't agree." "I just wanted to look," she was offended. "Yours is, well, old anyway." While we were arguing, the men were already spinning the tape measure. The September shyness that I felt when I first gave her money for debts returned and dug into me. I was just as ashamed now for standing up for my own sofa, as if I was defending not furniture, but the right to breathe. When the installers left, leaving a piece of paper with the dimensions on the table, I said to Yegor, "Tomorrow I will change the cylinder on the door." The voice was even, almost alien. He sighed. "No need for war," he answered slowly. "This is Mother. What if she gets sick? What if—" "If she gets sick, she will call," I said, "or knock. But she won't stand in the middle of our living room with a tape measure." At night, I dreamed of our door. There was no keyhole, only a hole in the shape of a hand. I woke up and decided, in the morning I'll go to the hardware store, buy a new lock cylinder, install it. Not because out of spite, because the boundaries should not be in the head, but in the hardware. The kettle breathed. As Lyudmila Petrovna likes to say, I watched the steam curl from the spout, and in this quiet dance, perspective finally appeared. But the morning was ahead. I came home earlier than planned. My meeting was postponed. There was a note on the door, her round, childish handwriting. "I'll take the sofa in the evening, don't worry, it won't be for long. Then we'll buy you a better one. I left the key on your nightstand." My fingers went cold. I ran my palm over the paper. It trembled because I was trembling. "Is this a joke?" I asked the void. It was quiet inside the apartment, and that silence was no longer warm water. It was snow into which the footprints had sunk. There was no key on the nightstand, only our old knitted keychain with a small compass, a gift to Yegor for our first shared home, lay separately like a marker. I took it, felt the cold metal in my palm, and realized she didn't need it just in case. She needed access. Igor answered the third call. "Mom asked," he said immediately without greeting. "She has a back problem. She can't sit on hers. This one of yours is softer. We'll give it to her for a couple of weeks. I'll help her move it. Do you mind?" I exhaled so hard that my eyes darkened. "I'm against it. This is our home." "It's temporary," he said habitually. "Like her key?" I hung up the phone, took a breath, took my coat and went out. Not to the hardware store, no. My legs themselves carried me home, back, to just stand on the threshold when they came, to look into the eyes of all three, Yegor, her, and those two in the gray jackets. At 6 o'clock in the evening, the lock turned. As if on command, the door swung open wider than it should have. The magnet flew off the wall, and they entered the apartment. The men were already pulling the black film. Lyudmila Petrovna was snapping short orders. "Be careful, don't scratch your legs." Yegor was the last one to walk and didn't look at me. His face was the same as on those evenings when he returned from school with a bad grade. Guilty in advance. "Stop," I said. My voice was quiet, but it echoed in the walls. The men froze. She raised her wet eyes to me, ready for any role. A martyred mother, a cunning housewife, a weak pensioner. And at that moment, I noticed a small sparkle in her hand. Our second key keeper, my twin, with a keychain in the shape of a compass. The compass swung, the needle pointed straight north. And that meant only one thing. One of us would finally go in its direction. "Put the key on the table," I said, and I was surprised at how calmly these words sounded. The men with the tape measure froze like mannequins, one with a bent knee, the other with his hand in the air. Lyudmila Petrovna, still with a smile on half her face, pulled it down for a second, and I saw the real thing, irritation, like a scratch under a transparent film. She looked down at the shiny drop of metal in her palm, our key with a small compass, and slightly squeezed her fingers. "I'll bet. Just bring it later," she tried to move aside into the familiar viscous water of later. No later now, and no look at the sofa. This is our home. Any visits, only by phone, and when we are home installers, only by appointment. And the key on the table. I spoke quietly, but there was iron in every word. Yegor was the last one standing at the door, and I saw how several people were trying to negotiate with each other inside him. His son, who was used to saving a tear, a man who wanted peace, and the one who was afraid of the word borders. He ran his hand over his neck and coughed. "Mom, let's not make a spectacle of it," he said quietly and extended his hand. The key. Her eyebrows twitched, and the old reflex kicked in. Wet eyes, a sob, a half-turn towards the door as if she was already leaving to be stopped. "Is this how you treat me?" Whispering as if a stage for cameras that aren't there. I just—" "The key," I repeated. "Now." The pause was thick. Then, trying to give the gesture dignity, she placed the keychain on the table, carefully with 2 fingers. The metal hit the wood so distinctly that I remembered the sound. The men sneezed with relief with their tape measures, but stood motionless. Yegor exhaled. The sofa stays, I added. Dot. Lyudmila Petrovna nodded briefly, gathered herself into a ball and left, exhaling. You are ungrateful. And she, of course, did not address this whisper to me. The men, having received a sign from Yegor with their eyes, trudged after her. The door closed, shook slightly, as if the house itself said, finally. Igor looked at the key on the table for a long time, then at me. You could have been softer, he said. I smiled without smiling. I was softer for 10 years. There are imprints of softness on our door, like an old rug. He sat down, placed his palm on the table next to the keychain, without touching it, and was silent for a long time. In the silence, I heard the water running in the radiators in a thin, intermittent stream, as if learning to breathe again, we too. The key lay on the table until the morning I went to work earlier than usual with unexpected ease. I could breathe deeper. At lunchtime, I bought a new lock cylinder, not out of revenge, from arithmetic. If the variable unauthorized entry appears in the equation, then at least one parameter must be replaced with a constant. In the evening, the master clicked a couple of times with a screwdriver. The fragments of the brass larva clinked in the basin, and the door became ours, in fact. If anything happens, he'll call, said the master, writing down the phone number on the back of the receipt. And without asking, they shouldn't come. That night I slept as if after an illness. Sleep tied me in a warm net, and not a single sound from the outside could tear it. In the morning I made coffee and watched the steam rise in a spiral to the ceiling, and thought about how much air is released in the house when the rules begin to operate in it. The phone beeped. Mom. I saw how Yegor's shoulder line tensed. Hello. He went out onto the balcony. I wasn't eavesdropping. Their words came in like a draft through a loosely closed door. Yes, we changed it. No, not against you. No, not out of anger. No, it's not our fault that you're scared. Mom, I'll come by in the evening. He came back and sat down opposite. She was crying, he said, and raised his head. But the key will remain with us, period, and visits are only by agreement. I told her about this. It was new small, but new I nodded. Inside me, from this I said some old piece of ice broke off and quietly fell. The new one lasted exactly 3 days. Then came the small but precise jabs. A message from Yegor's cousin popped up on Viber. Hang in there, son, we didn't think she'd turn out like this. By she, they meant me. Almost immediately a screenshot came from the family chat. Lyudmila Petrovna wrote there that her daughter-in-law, I'm not her daughter-in-law, but small inaccuracies are her thing, kicked her out of the apartment, installed a new lock, and now won't let her in to wait until her neighbors flood the kitchen. Comments like bees to a dessert flew in instantly. These days have no heart. What if she's sick? Old woman, what does it cost you? I felt the sticky resentment rise, covering my skin like honey that makes me sick. I didn't write to them, Yegor said, looking at his phone. Honestly, it was her. I know, I answered, but they'll be calling you, not her. And then you're in between again. He bit his lip. We decided not to answer. We were silent. I went to wash the cups. The water began to hum, foaming. I developed a habit of measuring the world with water. If it makes noise, it means it's alive. In the evening, returning home, I sensed something was wrong already on the landing. Plastic, dust, male voices. There was a box with the logo of an electronics store on the landing. There was a piece of paper taped to our door. Delivery TV time, 19 quad to 21. I checked my watch, 1840. We didn't order anything, I told Yegor, already unloading the groceries from the bag. He turned strangely pale. Mom asked me to register it for her through my account, he said quietly and exhaled. I forgot to unlink the card. I froze. For a second, the world decided to play freeze. The kettle fell silent. The street outside the window stopped making noise. My hand with a bag of pasta froze over the table. And how much? I asked, as if in someone else's voice. 29, he whispered. I'll pay it all back in installments. The words, I'll return everything, are from the old theater. In the same place where later is, I put the pasta on the table. Call and cancel right now. It's no longer possible. The couriers are coming. I sat down and laid out in front of me all the receipts I had been keeping lately: bed, chair, deposit, taxi, boxes. The sum added up to a large figure. I looked at it and thought that this wasn't even money. These were meters of air that we had given away, and the air was running out. The couriers called at 19:05, quickly, businesslike. Where should I put it? Nowhere, I said. We weren't warned. They shrugged their shoulders. Paid. Yegor, blushing, called his mother. From the other side, there was crying, accusations, a dropped fork, a dog that she didn't have, but the sound was needed for the dramaturgy. Okay, he said. Take it to her entrance. I'll meet her. He left, and I took an old folder out of the closet and started to collect our history into documents. I wrote down expenses, dates, appointments. I printed out a sheet of rules. A funny word for home, but there was no other. Visits, by appointment, outside craftsmen, no. Purchases, not through us. Keys from third parties, no. Assistance, discussed in advance and in writing. I stuck the sheet to the inside of the closet door, to the one where we keep the first aid kit. Let words live between the bandages and peroxide, which also heal. Igor returned at 10. He was tired and smelled of someone else's entrance and frost. At her house, he began and stopped short. In general, they set it up, and yes, she asked you not to make up rules. She's offended like at school. She's not offended, I said. She's uncomfortable. These are different words. He nodded and sat down. He looked at his hands for a long time. We were silent, but it was not an empty silence, but a dense one. The thought was born in him that we could still hold on to one rope, without distinguishing whose knots were tight on it. On Saturday, I went to see her myself. Not out of love, out of necessity. I wanted to see her new place with my own eyes, not in her stories, not in other people's chats. She came out to the entrance like the mistress of a large yard, holding the door with one hand with the other indicating where to put the imaginary load. "Oh, you've arrived," she said, not hiding her resentment. "Come in already." Her apartment was like a TV show before or after, where after is almost before, only with a new TV. There was a pyramid of candies on the table, a worn coat on the chair, a blanket on the armchair which I chose, thinking about her back. In the corner was an empty washing machine box. It smelled of a bakery and powder. The TV really stretched. She turned on a channel where people were shouting at people, and the shouts filled the room like steam from boiling soup. "Why did you keep the key?" I asked. "And what if the lock jams? Automatically. Or will you forget? Then you'll call. Or we'll call. You're an adult, Lyudmila Petrovna, you have your own home. You asked, we helped, but ours. She rolled her eyes. I sat down opposite her. I took out a folder and put it on the table. What is this? Disgustedly. Expenses, so that you don't say that we did nothing, and so that you see the boundaries. We are not a bank and not a comfort delivery service. We are Yegor's family and we are people. If you violate our boundaries, then next time there will be no help, no sofa, no TV, no bring me your plates because the water in my sink makes a strange noise. For the first time in a long time, she fell silent, not because of the theater, but because she couldn't find her line. Her eyes darted from the folder to the TV, from the TV to me, then to where the keys were hanging in the hallway. You're leaving me, she finally squeezed out. We are teaching you to walk, I answered, with your own feet. We talked for another hour. I said a lot, and for the first time I didn't make excuses. She, less than usual. At the end of the conversation, she took the sheet of paper with the rules with 2 fingers like a lighter and put it in a drawer. She didn't tear it, and that was already new. Take the compass, I said on the threshold. It's ours. She shrugged. Well, take it if you feel sorry for it. But she didn't go to the closet, and I didn't ask. I just turned around and left. When I got up home, the key turned in the lock softly, like butter. I entered our air, exhaled, but the silence wavered, like a string before it strikes. I felt it with my skin and almost immediately heard a short, businesslike call to the intercom. "Furniture delivery," said a male voice. "To you." "We didn't order anything," I answered habitually, but the mechanism had already been set in motion. People stamped on the stairs, belts rattled in the corridor, and film rustled. Igor ran out of the bedroom pulling on a sweater. "What is this?" I asked, but he had already pulled out his phone and his face had tightened. "Mom asked me to arrange for the pickup of your—" He hesitated, but pressed. "Our sofa. She, so as not to bother you, arranged for it for today. She said that you didn't like it anyway." I slid down the wall with my back to the level of the door handle. The door is ours, our lock is ours, and the men in the hallway turning the cart are a reality that doesn't ask how you feel. I got up, went into the hallway, opened the door just wide enough to see them. Two of them, not the ones with the tape measure, but others, in branded jackets. One smiled routinely. "We are behind the sofa." I smiled too, the way people smile when they give blood for analysis, politely but cheaply. "There won't be a sofa today. We have an application," he showed the tablet, "and on the screen are our names, my address, my apartment." I felt Yegor coming close to me, his shoulder touched mine. He was silent, and this silence suddenly became more important than words, because in his silence there was a battle. Who is he at this moment? A son or a man with whom I am building a house? "Take away the cart," I said and heard, not a voice but steel. "The sofa remains." The guy with the tablet shrugged, but his gaze darted past me to Yegor. "As you say, master," he said to Yegor. "The hostess said," Yegor answered, without looking at me. "Turn around." The men turned around. Someone invisible in the entrance exclaimed, "Well!" either from disappointment or from interest. I carefully closed the door. My heart was beating as if I was running up the stairs. "I'll call her," Yegor said. "Right now." He went into the kitchen. I stayed in the hallway and looked at our key, lying where I had put it this morning. The compass in the keychain shook slightly from my steps on the floor. The arrow sometimes lay to the north, sometimes got lost, as if there were too many metal objects in the house to determine the way. The phone rang again. Now they were calling me. The number is not saved. For some reason I took it. "You are a monster," said the voice of a woman who seemed to have once had a sweet sense of humor. "Old mother, out on the street without a sofa, without a key. God sees everything." "God sees," I said, "and sees how adults learn to live separately. Goodbye." I hung up, and at that moment Yegor came out of the kitchen. He was pale as paper, and in his eyes I saw not the usual fatigue, but enlightened anger, not at me. "She said that she would come anyway, quietly, just to sit, and that she must have the key, and that if we don't give up the sofa, she will resolve the issue her own way." "In your own way, what do you mean?" I asked. He shrugged, and at that moment a new message popped up in the messenger, from that very family chat video. The preview showed our door, filmed from the bottom up, and someone's voice behind the scenes. "Look how they made me a stranger in my own home." The video had everything: a sign with our number, my shadow in the hallway, men in the corridor, the phrase, "the landlady said." The comments were already multiplying and buzzing. I took the phone, my face became hot. "Okay," I said. "Since she chose publicity, I'll choose paper." "What paper?" Yegor didn't understand. "The one that changes everything. I will prepare a statement to the local police officer about illegal attempts to remove property and about unauthorized entry. And me notification to her about the termination of any financial support for violating the boundaries. And an invitation to a family psychologist. The choice is yours, to come with me, or to go in circles." He sat on the edge of his boot in the hallway, like in childhood, and ran his hand over his face. "Give me a week," he said. "A week and I'll put everything in order. I promise." Promises are fragile currency. I weighed it in my hand and suddenly realized that I was ready to give this week not so much to him as to myself to see if the compass needle had stopped drifting to the side. "A week," I repeated, "until Sunday." We exchanged glances, short, serious. I went to the kitchen and started looking for a blue folder in the drawer. I found it. I opened it. I put a sheet of clean paper on top, white, like a new wall on which no one has yet pasted someone else's rules. And at that moment, there was an insistent knock at the door, long, like calling a doctor at night. Yegor raised his eyebrows. She? I went up to the peephole and saw, not her owner of the apartment. The same one, lazy and honest, who hadn't raised the rent for years because he was lazier. He had a printout in his hands, an official one with a seal, "Good evening," he said when I opened the door with the chain. They called me and said that I have scandals, furniture thefts here, and that strangers are living in the apartment. I came to understand what's going on with you, and that he raised the sheet of paper higher, and why I have a statement from the owner in my office demanding that the lease agreement be changed to her name. The arrow on my keychain twitched and lay as straight as never before. It seemed that the north had finally appeared. But who exactly was walking in its direction now? Me or the one who knocks on the doors of other people's laws? I opened the door with a chain. The smell of the street entered through the crack. Wet snow, tobacco, a little iron. The owner stood confidently, like a person who holds the key to all the doors in this entrance. The seal on the printout shone like an eye. "Come in," I said, unclicking the chain and stepping back. "I'll explain." He crossed the threshold without taking off his shoes and somehow immediately fit into our corridor. He glanced at the rug, at the hanger, at the crack in the ceiling. Yegor came out of the kitchen, took the keychain with the compass from the table, and put it aside like a sharp object. A woman called me. The owner did not sit down, holding the sheet of paper like a shield. She said that you are illegally holding her furniture, changing the locks, not letting the owner in. Then the agency received a statement. Change the lease agreement to my name, since the current tenants are violating the terms. The woman is my boyfriend's mother, I said. She recently moved out. The contract is in his name. She has her own apartment. We helped with the deposit. I put the folder on the table. Here are the receipts. Correspondence with deliveries, attempts to remove furniture without our consent. We changed the lock because she had a key and she came without warning, to the point that she brought fitters to her home to try on our sofa. The owner leafed through the pages in silence. He had the look of a man who was used to distinguishing between words and facts. He clinked the seal on the table, as if testing the sound of the wood, and nodded. You are right according to the documents, he said. The contract is on Yegor, third parties are by agreement. Any conflicts are between you and your relatives, not the landlord. I will not change the contract. But a warning, if there are constant scandals in the apartment, complaints from neighbors, arbitrariness, I will be forced to terminate it. I am old, but not deaf. I love silence. Igor stepped forward. I guarantee peace of mind, he said firmly, and for the first time in a long time this firm did not tremble. Mom will not come without calling. Third parties do not have keys. I will come to you tomorrow. We will sign an additional agreement on access. Okay. The owner hid the sheet of paper and looked around again. And one more thing. They called me from the entrance and said that someone was filming a video and putting on a show here. No need for a show. He had already turned to the door, but still added, softening a little. I didn't raise your price because I'm lazy, not kind, but I don't like to tolerate unnecessary things either. The contract is paper, but the house is alive. Take care of it. At that moment, the bell rang again. The door shook from insistence, a long, demanding ring. We looked at each other, and from the expression on my face, he understood everything. Nodded and opened it himself, smoothly without pathos. She stood on the threshold. With her eyes painted, the traces of mascara were already smeared, either snow or tears in her hands. A phone, the camera was on, aimed at us. I'm filming for the truth, she said. Look, how they're throwing me out of my house where I lived. Stop. The owner raised his palm like a traffic cop. I am the owner. The house is mine. The lease agreement is for your son. You are not listed in the agreement. Turn off the video. We are not a TV studio. She blinked, apparently unprepared for this. The phone dropped as if it had been turned off along with the roll. I'm a mother, she quickly found another party. I have things there. I have a shower there, a kettle. I had a key. You shouldn't have a key, he answered calmly, and according to the documents, there are no things of yours here, except for your personal ones, which you will take by agreement. The shower is in your apartment. The kettle is also in your apartment. If you want to come in, call and make arrangements. If you make a scene, I will call the police as the landlord, and," he turned to us, "you will call too." She turned to Yegor with a wet look, like a wet rag. Maybe he would take pity. "Son," quietly. "Well, tell him let them give me the sofa, I have a back and the key, I was always there." Igor exhaled. I knew this pause. Usually our whole old life entered it, but today there was something different in the pause. "Mom, Dion," he said, and his voice turned out to be adult. "No, the sofa stays. You don't have the keys and you won't. Visits, by phone when we're home, money, we discuss in advance, no deliveries to our address without us. And," he followed his gaze to her phone, "family chats and videos with our door. Stop. This is ours." She opened her mouth, snapped it shut like a fish in the air. Her shoulders sagged, but for the first time I saw that under the stoop there was not only pity, but also the habit of taking. Habit is a heavy thing, but not made of stone. You can unlearn how to wear it. "I'm alone," she said in a strangled voice. "I have no one." "You have you," I replied, softer than I thought I could. "It's a lot. It's grown up." The owner nodded as if he had put the stamp once again, but this time it was invisible. He took a pencil out of his pocket, wrote the district police officer's number on the back of the receipt and handed it to us. "Just in case, I hope I won't need it." And he left as quietly as he came, without creaking, without other people's words. Lyudmila Petrovna stood in the corridor, realized that there would be no scene, turned around and left without slamming the door. The sound of her steps in the entrance seemed lighter than usual, as if for the first time she had decided to go not towards the noise, but away from it. That same night, Yegor and I went to the police station. Don't make a scene. Record it. The duty officer, round-faced and tired, listened, accepted the statement about the attempted removal of property and about the interference in private life, wrote down the numbers of the couriers from the invoices, dictated the wording so that there would be no hysteria with the facts. We went out into the cold and silently gave each other our hot palms. Not because we were afraid, but because we decided to bring the story to paper, like to the shore. The next day, Yegor unlinked the card from all the wonderful installment plans, closed access, set limits. In the evening, he went to meet his mother, not to her home, but to a cafe where it smelled of cinnamon, and people come not to cry into their oven mitts, but to drink tea. He brought with him the sheet of paper that we wrote together at night. There were only 4 points on it. Black, clear. Visits, by phone, assistance, by agreement, no keys, no purchases or deliveries through us. He returned late, tired, but as if half a centimeter taller. "Did you sign it?" I asked. "No," he answered honestly, "but she took a copy and said she would think about it." And he sat down looking at the table, and for the first time she listened. "Didn't argue," cried Bunny. Yes, but she didn't argue. We lived a week, the one I gave, as if in a new time. The phone rang less often, messages became shorter. No deliveries, no early keys in the lock. Sometimes I caught myself listening like a person who has just taken off heavy boots and is still waiting for the heaviness from them, but the heaviness did not return. The owner called us to the office to sign an additional agreement on the access regime and obligation to notify third parties. We walked there twice as easily as on our previous trips for documents. He read aloud, rhythmically, like a prayer to the brownie. Responsibility, order, mutual respect. We signed. We received copies. He put our agreement in a folder on which was written, "House number, residence, quiet." I smiled. He did too. A couple of days later, a message came from the local police officer. "A conversation was held. You have been warned." I read it 3 times. It was dry, but something warm blossomed inside me, like tea in a mug when you put your palms to it. And on Saturday, we did what we had been putting off for a year. We got out the paint, a small can that I had bought without hope, and a brush. Yegor covered the floor with film. I brought out a chair. We stood under the ceiling, where the crack had been an arrow for many months, spinning without a north. I ran the brush once, thinly, carefully, and the arrow disappeared. In its place there remained a twig, just a twig, and it was in place. "Shall we go to the river tomorrow?" Yegor asked, washing the paint off his fingers. "Without vertebrae and urgent matters, just by bus, just the 2 of us." "Let's go," I said. And I suddenly felt relieved by the very word "let's go." which used to always imply someone's call, someone's request, someone's and along the way. Now it doesn't. Now it was just us and the road. In the evening, he gave me a keychain with a compass in my palm. The metal was warm, as if it really pointed not to the north but to home. "Let it be with you," he said. "You know how to stay on course." I corrected, we are holding him. We started saving for hours. A new sheet moved to the refrigerator page. Not rules, but plan. A summer vacation, a sofa, hours bought with our money, a consultation with a psychologist for him, Friday $1,900 joint. If it works out. By if it works out, I no longer meant a miracle, I meant work. Steps, words, pauses. Lyudmila Petrovna has not disappeared from our lives. Fairy tales about disappearance are for children. She wrote a couple more times in the family chat, shared her pains and betrayals, but when they answered her, "Let people live," she calmed down faster than usual. Because a show without an audience quickly folds up the scenery. We began to come to her on Sundays, not every, but when we agreed, we brought soup in a container, unscrewed that very ill-fated lid on the filter in the bathroom, which simply turned in the other direction, and left, without lingering on the stage, and I saw how, each time a little confidence increased in her hands, in those very household trifles that she gave us for service. She began to put money in a jar. Funny, 10, 20. She took an old dress out of the closet and suddenly said, "Maybe I should go to the clinic?" In her maybe, there was no music of victory. There were the first 3 notes of stubbornness that does not complain. Sometimes in the evening, I still caught a pain in myself, from the memories of how our lock was opened with someone else's key, how strange men were standing in the hallway, how the phone showed, "Call Mom." And then I put the kettle on. It began its usual living breath, sat down on the sofa, ours, still old, with worn fabric but ours, and wrote, "What we did, what worked, what didn't." Paper is not for war but for memory. Because memory is also a house, and in it too the larvae need to be changed. In winter, the city is especially noisy. Cars, people, cats at the trash cans, trams, but it became quiet in why. Our house not deaf, not lifeless, but quiet. Like in music, between the bars, I learned not to wait for a cough at night. Yegor, not to look away when talking about boundaries. Both of us, not to confuse kindness with convenience. And if you ask me what this story has taught me, I will say simply, home is a door. Love is a handle on our side, and not on any side. Borders are not walls, but windows. You can see each other through them, but no one climbs in without knocking. On Sunday, we went to the river. The snow there was dry and creaky, and it made you want to laugh. We walked along the embankment, and the wind pulled us forward, not back to other people's kitchens, but to where the water under the ice still flows. Yegor took a keychain out of his pocket and held it up to the light. The arrow lay straight. I touched his fingers, and for the first time in a long time, I understood. Calm is not when it's quiet around. It's when you don't expect inside that at any second someone will open the door with their key. And in this calm, I put a period, not bold, not loud. Calm. This is how you put a mark on the map. Here we live. And if suddenly the cardinal directions start to get confused again, we have a compass. But the main thing is that we now have a course.